You can argue that this is one of the most important shots to master for the game of pickleball because it often sets up your offense to win more pickleball games. So in this video, we're gonna be sharing 5 tips that will help you never lose a dink rally again.
And be sure to stay to the end because after those 5 tips, we're gonna give you a bonus tip that's a little more advanced. Let's get into it.
This first tip will arguably change your dink rallies in a second, and it's learning to take dinks out of the air. So there's 2 reasons why this is really helpful. The first reason is it's creating an advantage for you because you're taking time away from your opponent. So for example, if you are dinking and you go to take a dink out of the air that's deeper, then all of a sudden you give your opponent that much less time to react to the ball. Now, another reason why this is really essential is it actually creates opportunity for less errors. So have you ever noticed that when a dink is landing near your feet or almost behind your body that you'll pop the ball up a lot? That's because that ball is getting out of your contact point zone. So one of the easiest ways to eliminate errors in dinking rallies is to take balls out of the air that are going to land either at your feet or behind your body. And I'll show you what this looks like. So if we're dinking and a dink is about to land at my feet and I try to hit it from my feet, I'll often either pop that ball up or hit it in the net. But instead, having my paddle out in front and taking that ball out of the air, if it lands a little bit deeper, all of a sudden I'm eliminating that potential error just by hitting that ball out front.
This next tip is a simple adjustment and it almost feels illegal because it's so simple. But when you learn it, it will transform your dinking. I see a lot of beginners, especially when they're dinking cross court, they actually are late getting the paddle in position. So they kind of whip the paddle back and then whip the paddle forward in their dinking, and that causes a lot of errors. Instead, we want to kind of track the ball and get that paddle in position, almost meeting the ball where that contact point's gonna be before the ball gets there. This is what I mean. Okay, so when you're dinking here, I actually want to get the paddle with early prep. I'm getting that tip down and I'm almost beating the ball to the contact point zone. Whereas sometimes beginners, they'll come here and you see how that ball, that would have gone out. You see how that ball, I kind of pulled back and chopped at it? Instead, you almost want to hold that ball on your paddle for a really long time, and that happens by getting the paddle in position early.
This next tip is a mistake I see a lot of beginners make, and it puts your team at a really disadvantaged place when it comes to positioning on the court, and it's backing off the kitchen line. So when you're dinking, I'll see a lot of beginners step back to let the ball bounce, but then they just hang out back here. All of a sudden, what that does is it puts your team at a massive disadvantage because there's so many holes on the court. You need to remember that playing at the kitchen line is the most advantageous and offensive place to play on the court. So instead of backing up and putting yourself at a disadvantage with positioning, try to hold the line, and anytime that you back up to get a dink, come back and recover to the kitchen. This is going to make sure that you stay offensive and you have the best positioning on the pickleball court.
This next tip is something all advanced players do when they're dinking. It's something I see beginners do very seldomly, and so that's why you need to do it. And what I'm talking about is tracking the ball with your paddle and with your feet. If I'm dinking, especially if I'm in this cross-court pattern, I don't just want to stay here. If the ball is out wide, I'm actually going to slide my feet to cut off angles. And if the ball gets pushed this way, I still have a lot of time to get there. If the ball is on this side of the court, I have to cover this line. So I'm gonna be active with my feet and get in position. With my paddle, I want to track the ball. So what you shouldn't do is have your body and your chest and your paddle facing forward when the ball's over here. That is working against itself. Instead, if the ball is on the opposite side of the court, I'm gonna open up my chest and my paddle, and everything's gonna be facing the ball wherever it is on the court.
This next tip is often something I see beginners forget, especially when they get into gameplay, and it's moving dinks around. Now, I know this sounds really simple, but it's one of the first things to go when you get into a game. It's really easy to just start dinking with your opponent and almost get into a lull of just hitting the same spot over and over. This doesn't make it hard for your opponent because they kind of can get in a rhythm. So you want to be the disruptor on the court. So I want to try to make make my opponent move inside foot, outside foot, pull them out wide. I want to take some dinks off the ground, some out of the air. Anything to kind of get them out of a rhythm and make them move. Be the disruptor on the court, move your dinks around.
Since you've made it to the end, I'm gonna give you an absolute cheat code about knowing when to be aggressive with your dink. When you're dinking here, you never want to speed a ball when you're off balance or not in position. You also want to avoid speeding up balls that have a lot of spin on them. When the ball is slower or maybe bounces a little bit higher and you have time to set up, that's a ball you want to attack with or be aggressive with on that dink. If you're in the market for a pickleball net, look no further than Selkirk.com. The Selkirk nets are the preferred pickleball nets of the PPA Tour, and they have options for beginners, intermediate, and advanced players for all budgets and all levels. Head on over to Selkirk.com/collections/nets to get yours today.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to the PlayPickleball.com YouTube channel.
And we'll see you on the next one.